In 2011, an artist named Gregory Clone hauled a standard city dumpster into a workshop in Brooklyn, New York, and turned it into a fully functional tiny home. It had hardwood floors, granite countertops, a rooftop deck you could sit on with a drink, and working plumbing. The whole build cost about $2,000. That dumpster house ended up on Inside Edition and The Rachel Ray Show. That was 2011. By the time Chloe moved back to Oakland, California, he had stopped thinking about dumpsters as art projects and started thinking about them as answers. Nobody outside his block in East Oakland was paying attention to what he did next. Every morning, Chloe walked through the alleyways and industrial lots where contractors had been illegally dumping construction waste for years. Plywood, bed frames, car consoles, auto glass, refrigerator doors, washing machine portholes, cargo pallets, all of it just sitting there rotting. And every morning, he walked past homeless people sleeping under tarps and in inside cardboard shelters a few blocks away. One day, he asked himself a question that changed everything. What if he could build a home in a single day for no money at all, using nothing but the trash piled up around his neighborhood? That question became the Homeless Homes Project. Chloe started pulling materials from dumping sites and assembling them into tiny structures on wheels. Refrigerator doors became front doors. Washing machine portholes became windows. Cargo pallets became load-bearing frames. Discarded plastic sheeting became rainproof roofing. The only things he actually purchased were nails, screws, glue, paintbrushes, and saw blades. Less than $100 per home. Each house was built on small wheels, so it could be pushed around and parked without violating permanent structure laws. Each one had a locking door for privacy and safety, and each one was painted in colors so bright they looked like they belonged on a Caribbean street corner. Cotton candy pink, canary yellow, sky blue, hot red. He gave them names like R2D2, Romanian farmhouse, and the Chuck wagon. He built about 40 of them and gave every single one away to homeless people in his neighborhood. The very first home went to a homeless couple he had gotten to know. While photographing the streets of Oakland for a book about the shelters homeless people build for themselves, he showed up with the tiny house and a bottle of champagne. Think about that for a second. A man building homes from literal garbage, spending less than $100 on each one, and handing them to his neighbors with champagne. What makes Chloe's approach different from every government housing initiative is the speed. He asked himself one day whether he could build a home in a single day for no money, and the answer turned out to be yes. He could walk through the neighborhood in the morning, pull materials from a dumping site by lunch, and have a lockable, weatherproof shelter assembled before sundown. No permits, no committee meetings, no design reviews, just a guy with a saw, a handful of nails, and a pile of garbage that nobody else wanted. He also ran workshops in East Oakland, teaching other people how to do the same thing. Artists, handy people, even high school students showed up to learn the process. The idea was never that Chloe alone would solve homelessness in Oakland. The idea was that anyone with basic construction skills and access to a dumping site could build a home for their neighbor. He once told an interviewer that he was just ripping a page out of the homeless people's own playbook. They were already building shelters from found materials. He was just doing it better. But the city of Oakland did not hand out champagne in return. An official at Oakland Public Works told reporters that the craftsmanship was admirable, but whether these structures were allowed to exist under city law was a completely different question. That tension between what a person can build in a weekend and what a city will allow to stand for more than a week is the thread running through every single story you are about to hear, because this idea did not stay in Oakland, it jumped. And when it landed in Atlanta, Georgia, it took a form that nobody expected. In late 2023, the city of Atlanta had a problem it could no longer ignore. Thousands of people were sleeping on the streets of downtown, and the traditional approach of building shelters was taking years and costing tens of millions of dollars. The city needed something faster, so Mayor Andre Dickens and his team came up with an idea that sounded almost too simple. What about shipping containers? Not new ones, repurposed ones. The same metal boxes that hospitals had used during COVID for extra space were now sitting in storage lots going unused. Atlanta bought 20 of them, loaded them onto trailers, drove them to a city-owned parking lot on Forsyth Street near the Garnet train station, and started converting them into homes. Each unit measured 160 square feet and came fully outfitted with a bed, a bathroom, a kitchenette with a refrigerator, oven and microwave, heating and air conditioning, a television, and Wi-Fi. Each resident received their own key. The whole project, all 40 units, was finished in 4 months flat. They named it The Melody, after a woman named Melody Bloodworth, who had died on the streets of Atlanta after years of chronic homelessness. A man named Jimmy Thompson was one of the first residents. For the previous year, Thompson had been sleeping on concrete in downtown Atlanta, praying each night that he would wake up in the morning. His feet were in constant pain from the pavement. He was threatened at least once or twice a week. Then a shipping container changed his life. He later said he would never fully understand all the hard work, prayers, and blessings it took to get him there, but that he could be grateful. Another resident, Sherlyn Freeman, described the moment she got her key. She said her favorite part of every single day is when she walks up to her door and opens it, because that key is physical proof that the home is hers. Her first night sleeping in her own bed was, in her words, heaven. She wants to go back to school to become a nurse so she can help other people in the same situation she was in. She said the little pieces that used to make up who she was, things as simple as having a favorite color, had faded away over the years because survival took up everything. Now she is starting to get those pieces back. A woman named Wanda Sutton became homeless after her landlord raised the rent on her studio apartment. She lived under a bridge for 3 years before the Melody took her in. She told a reporter that she still sometimes cannot believe she has her own place. Another resident named George Suddeth put it simply. He said he can go in his own room, lay down, go to sleep when he likes, and eat what he likes. Nobody messes with you. He called it a dream come true. These are adults describing the experience of having a door that closes and a room that stays quiet. That is how low the bar has been set for hundreds of thousands of people in this country. But here is where this story gets complicated. Atlanta announced plans for 500 total units, backed by $60 million in city council funding. And the moment those plans hit neighborhoods beyond downtown, the resistance arrived. Residents in Mechanicsville, a lower-income neighborhood about a mile south of the Melody, pushed back hard. They argued the city was eager to house homeless people in black, lower-income neighborhoods, but would never place these containers in wealthier, whiter areas. It was not the containers people objected to. It was who got stuck with them. That fight is playing out in every city where these programs exist. The homes themselves work. The politics around where to put them do not. Now, if Atlanta showed what a city government can do when it moves fast, Seattle showed what happens when volunteers take over entirely. In Seattle's Soto Industrial District, there is a 15,000 square foot building called the Hope Factory. It does not make products for sale. It makes tiny homes for homeless people. The operation is run by Sound Foundations Northwest, a nearly all-volunteer organization that has turned home building into an assembly line. On any given day, 15 to 25 volunteers show up, no construction experience required, and work on roughly 12 tiny homes at a time. They build 6 days a week and finish 3 to 4 complete homes every single week. Each one costs $4,500 in materials. Those homes go to tiny home villages operated across the Puget Sound region. As of 2026, there are 26 villages either open or announced, holding about 750 tiny homes total. Each village has shared kitchens, bathrooms, laundry, and on-site case managers. The numbers coming out of this system are the ones that make government programs look embarrassing. In 2025, 55% of residents who moved out of tiny home villages transitioned into permanent housing, one of the highest rates of any shelter type in the country. And of those who made it to permanent housing, 98% were still housed 1 year later. Seattle has the fourth largest homeless population in the United States at over 16,000 people, and a crew of volunteers building homes for $4,500 each is outperforming programs that spend hundreds of times more. To put those numbers in perspective, a traditional emergency shelter in a major American city takes years to permit and construct and costs millions of dollars. A single unit of permanent supportive housing in cities like Los Angeles or San Francisco can cost over $600,000 and take 5 years from approval to occupancy. Sound Foundations Northwest builds a complete tiny home for $4,500 in materials and finishes it in about a week. An entire village's worth of homes, enough to house 50 to 80 people, comes off their assembly line in 10 to 12 weeks. The math is not even close, and the outcomes are not close either. In Los Angeles, the city spent $300 million on a program called Inside Safe. According to their own data, roughly 40% of the people placed into housing through that program ended up back on the streets. $300 million, 40% failure rate. Meanwhile, in Seattle, 98% of tiny home residents who transitioned to permanent housing were still housed a year later. These are not cherry-picked comparisons. These are the government's own numbers next to the volunteers' own numbers, and the volunteers are winning. If you are finding this useful, hit subscribe. I cover stories like this every single week. Now, for every city where the model is working, there is another city where the government is actively tearing it down. In New Haven, Connecticut, a man named Mark Colville runs a place called the Amistad Catholic Worker House. In March 2023, the city swept a homeless encampment near his property. Colville invited the displaced people to set up tents in his backyard. 7 months later, community volunteers built 6 tiny metal shelters over a single weekend. Each one had insulation, a lockable door, and enough room to sleep. Colville called the small community Rosette Neighborhood Village. One of the residents was a man named Dave Marone, who had been homeless for 13 years. He had lived in encampments, refused traditional shelters because he said they felt like jail, and had struggled with alcoholism for years. Once you are locked in at night and told when to eat and when to leave, he said, it does not feel much different from being incarcerated. Rosette Village was different. It gave him a small space that was his own, a community that checked on him without controlling him, and a routine that included working on a nearby farm a couple of days a week. He later said that if it was not for Mark and Luce Colville, he probably would not have made it. He was not doing well before he arrived. They gave him a chance to straighten up, get back on his medications, and find a job. But the city did not see it that way. New Haven's zoning board initially granted approval for the shelters, including electricity for heating and air conditioning. Then the mayor intervened, changed the approval to a 6-month provisional permit based on a technicality, and when that expired, the electricity was never reconnected. As of early 2026, residents of Rosette Village are still using extension cords run from the main house to power their shelters. The homes that volunteers built in a weekend have been standing for over 2 years. The city has spent that same 2 years trying to find legal reasons to shut them down. A similar fight happened in Bloomington, Illinois, but with a very different outcome. In early 2025, temperatures in central Illinois averaged 20 degrees, with a low of -8 in January. A man named Matthew Stone was living in a tent in the woods with his dog. He later described it simply as a very horrible experience. 3 days before temperatures dropped below zero, the city opened its first shelter village. They called it The Bridge, run by Home Sweet Home Ministries, a nonprofit that has been serving people on the margins in Bloomington for over 100 years. The CEO, Matt Burgess, had personally visited a shelter village in Missoula, Montana to study how it worked, talk to the people running the program, and then he brought the model back to Illinois. Bloomington's housing shortage had gotten worse since 2021 when a new manufacturing company drew more workers to the city than there were apartments to hold them. Homelessness spiked. Hundreds of people drove past the tent encampments and church parking lots every day without stopping. Most of the community did not even acknowledge the problem until they could literally see it from their cars. The tiny, colorful cabins that make up the bridge went up during the summer of 2025. By winter, they were saving lives. One resident had already transitioned to permanent housing within months of moving in. Building codes, written 40, 50, even 60 years ago, were never designed with a 200-square-foot house on wheels in mind. In many cities, a volunteer can build a tiny home over a weekend, but the permit to place it legally takes 18 months. The paperwork to discuss whether a home should exist takes longer than it takes to actually build the home. And while that paperwork sits on someone's desk, people are outside tonight in the cold. Tiny home programs are expanding, but they are not expanding fast enough for the person sleeping in a parking garage right now, or curled up under a bridge in January. For those people, the difference between surviving a freezing night and not often comes down to what they have on them. Emergency thermal bivvies, like the TerraShell, use a reflective lining that sends your own body heat back to you, creating a warm pocket around your body, even when the temperature drops well below freezing. They weigh almost nothing, packed down to the size of a fist, and unlike a regular blanket, they block wind and moisture at the same time. Whether you keep one in your car, your go bag, or you hand one to someone sleeping outside, it is one of the few things that actually works when the heater quits and the shelters are full. I have a link in the description below if you want to check those out. Here is what it all comes down to. According to the federal government's own count, from January 2025, 745,000 Americans were either in shelters, in temporary housing, or sleeping outside with nothing over their heads. Nearly 150,000 of them were children. Gregory Clone proved in Oakland that you can build a home from garbage for under $100. Atlanta proved you can convert 40 shipping containers into a housing village in 4 months. Sound Foundations, Northwest, proved that volunteers with no construction experience can build 3 to 4 homes a week on an assembly line for $4,500 each. Bloomington proved a tiny village can open 3 days before sub-zero temperatures and save lives that same winter. And Sherlyn Freeman in Atlanta proved something that all the data in the world cannot capture. She proved that the difference between sleeping under a bridge and sleeping in your own bed is a shipping container, a key, and someone willing to make it happen. The homes work. The numbers prove it. The question that still does not have an answer is why the people building them keep getting stopped by the people who are not building anything at all. If this story changed how you see this issue, hit subscribe. I break down stories like this every week, the kind that show you what is actually happening when nobody is filming. And click the video on screen right now. It connects directly to what you just watched.